Hey everybody, this is Zach, and this is week 2 of spooky Tanuki games. That's right, all October I will only be reviewing scary games. Before we get started, please remember that a like, a comment, or a subscribe means a lot to me and the channel. Without further delay, let's begin. I have some very fond memories of Dead Space 2. Dead Space 2 is one of the first horror games that I really enjoyed, and what enticed me initially about the game were the spacesuits. They seemed to have a heavy and cumbersome vibe to them, and it almost seemed like old school scuba diving gear, and that's one of the first turn-ons that I had for the game. It felt like it was all out of this sort of retro-futuristic laboratory that really did give it a grounding in reality that I think many other space games don't really have. They lean much more to the science fiction than the science. Dead Space 2 is one of my favorite games from the 7th generation, and there are very few games that I think have succeeded in what Dead Space did so well, which was scaring the living crap out of you while still giving you a unique gameplay experience. There aren't many games like it, and there haven't been many games since it that really hold a candle to what the guys and gals at Visceral Games accomplished years ago. The universe of Dead Space 2 is a fairly bleak one. The Earth has run out of natural resources, and people are sent to the far reaches of the universe to try to extract minerals from various planets and comets. This is done basically with massive mining machines, and this is how the first game takes place. And I don't want to give anything away because, you know, the first game is good, it just isn't my cup of tea. But the second game picks up in basically a space station that everything is going to hell in. In the original Dead Space, you figure out that this marker has been discovered on one of the mining expeditions, and it turns all the people on the ship, the Ishimura, into these awful freak creatures. And basically Isaac survives that, wakes up back on the Sprawl, which is the space station that you'll spend most of the game in Dead Space 2. The game itself is pretty bleak. You're not really going to be left with much hope, but there is a get some factor to this game that is not there in the first game. It's kind of like the difference between Alien and Aliens. When in Alien, Sigourney Weaver's character is just basically trying to survive. The alien is far more powerful than any of the human beings. In Dead Space 2, much like Aliens, there's a bigger factor of not being that afraid of the enemy. You know what to do, you have the weaponry, and it's up to you to just get out there and give them hell. And give them hell you shall. Because in Dead Space 2, you have a lot more options to craft weaponry, and upgrading your weaponry and your suits really helps you out. And that leads me to probably my favorite part of the Dead Space series, and especially Dead Space 2, and to a greater extent Dead Space 3, which is the gameplay. The gameplay in this game is immaculate. The first thing that people noticed about Dead Space as a franchise was that the game does not have a user interface like many other games. You don't have a health bar because that's on your back. Your LED spine basically tells you how much health you have left. You don't have an ammo meter on the screen as well. Whenever you're aiming, you can see how much ammo is left, but you're not going to have some sort of count for yourself. These sort of subtle, immersive elements made Dead Space a real breath of fresh air. It's really not like any other game, just from the most basic standpoint of even the UI, how the user interfaces with the game. This design choice is the bedrock of the game, and it gets extended to pretty much every other aspect as well. To defeat the grotesque freaks in the game that are called the necromorphs, you actually have to dismember them. A simple headshot just won't do. And this goes back to design choice. You can actually shoot your gun, or at least some of them, vertically or horizontally, depending on the type of gun you have. Dismemberment is the only way that you're going to defeat the enemies. If you're landing body shots, it's going to do pretty much nothing. This is all well and good, but without proper execution, it doesn't really matter, and that's where Dead Space really shines. This game is very tight on the control side. When you aim and you shoot, it's going where you want it to go. There is no wonkiness, there is no fighting the controller. I once heard an artist say that you should never fight your materials. And in gaming, this can be very true. Sometimes you are very much fighting the game itself, not necessarily the enemy in front of you. Dead Space 2 really gives you a lot of tactical options to take care of business. Storyline-wise in Dead Space 2, it's a standard fare. Basically, Isaac has woken up, he is having these extremely cool nightmares. There's basically a cult that's popped up in this space station that basically thinks that the artifact is their savior as opposed to their demise. It's up to Isaac to try to figure out how to get out of the space station, essentially, and he doesn't really know who to trust. And this is a really great idea because it also adds to the claustrophobia and the distrust of everyone. Even people who help you in the game, you don't trust them. People who you want to trust end up betraying you, and it is a very nihilistic way to look at the world, but in this world it makes sense because, to be honest, everything is going to hell. Literally, people are turning into freak babies. The sound design in this game is really excellent. You can be informed by very subtle sound cues in the game. When you're playing and you're in a big fight and there are lots of enemies in the room, you can actually hear the different sound effects that they make and decide who is going to take priority while you're fighting. If you've got a decent pair of headphones on, or you've got a nice setup to listen to in your little gamer room, it's a lot of fun and it's very informative. You're not going to ever wonder where another enemy is coming from. You're going to be informed by the sound design. Also, the guns all have a weightiness to them and a nice bassy tone to each of them that really does feel very satisfying when you're attacking. Also, when Isaac is boot stomping or attacking with his weapon in a melee style, it also has a nice crunchiness to it. I also really like all the sound effects that the elevators make and all the techie sound effects that everything makes as well. Visuals are always a hard part for any horror game because it's very difficult to present something that is aesthetically interesting but at the same time doesn't have the pitfalls of the dark grays, browns, and kind of nasty colors that muddle the images that should be scaring you but frankly you just can't see. A good horror game is only as good as the lighting, the grotesquely rendered monsters, and how much the music makes you anticipate the next corner, and Dead Space delivers on all of these scores. As I mentioned before, the suits have this really cool weightiness to them that I really like, and the security suits especially have a nice angular aspect to them, and there's a lot of cool neon highlights in the suits that really is cool too, from the helmet and from the spine and some other small details like that in the guns and things, all of which are just a real pleasure to soak in. And then with that contrast to the darkness of the game and the great lighting, it really does make it look really cool and make you feel like you're very empowered but at the same time at risk. That leads me to the lighting. The lighting in Dead Space 2 is really, really good. You get some ambient lights from your suit, which are very cool, but then also you get lots of lighting that makes you anticipate the next turn or makes you feel like you're kind of locked into one place. The lighting in this game is very, very effective and is used very effectively. I love the way this game makes you feel like half the lights are off and we're on emergency power. When the light gets very saturated, it also looks really, really excellent. Lastly, the game has really excellent level design. While Dead Space tries to give you this sense of claustrophobia, which is very effective, it also does something else that is very cool, which is to give you a sense that just around the corner, just outside the window, it is a functioning society. When you pass a window bay, you can actually see the rest of the sprawl, and it looks great. There's lots of levels of detail that you wouldn't anticipate. When you walk past a window bay, you can see the infinite reaches of space. You can see all these beautiful stars and solar systems, and this coupled with the zero gravity sections of the game just give you a sense that you really are in space and you are all alone. All gushing aside, Dead Space 2 is a great game. It's absolutely worth anyone's time, horror fan or not. At the time of this review, you can pick up a copy of Dead Space 2 for around the $10 mark, which I think is totally fair. The game is also packed in with Dead Space Isolation, which is the rail shooter for the Wii. And even that game runs for $10 to $15, so you've got a lot of bang for your buck. If you've played Dead Space 2, what are some thoughts, comments, or memories you might have of this game? If you haven't played Dead Space 2, how does it look to you? This is Zach with Tanuki Games. Any support you can give the channel, a like, a comment, or a subscribe is very much appreciated. Enjoy!